Okay, this is part 4 of Did you know that President Ronald Reagan was a snake oil salesman, and the U.S. Congress committed fraud in passing the 1981 tax cuts, the biggest in U.S. history, and the Tax Reform Act in 1986. And in the previous video, I was talking about Reagan's 4 lies in his debate with Walter Mondale in October of 1984, and we're going to go on here. Now, I would like to dispute a statement made by the Joint Committee on Taxation. It states the reason for the changes in H.R. 4242, now that's the 1981 Reagan tax cuts. They said, inflation erodes the value of the fixed dollar amounts utilized to determine tax liability. As a result, when incomes rise by, say, 10%, income taxes rise by approximately 16%. Now, you know what? That is mostly false. For example, if the 10% increase in income is the cost of living wage adjustment, that neutralizes the effects of inflation. The 6% tax increase is a distortion because the bracket tax increases are 2%, 3%, or 4 or 5. Only 2 of the 15 tax brackets increases are 6%. 13 are less. Secondly, not all 10% increases of income pushes you into a higher tax rate. For example, if your income was $30,000 in 1980 and it increased 10% in 1981 to $33,000, there would be no increase in your tax rate because it did not push you into a higher tax bracket. But under the Reagan tax cuts, you would have gotten a 10% tax cut in 1982 anyways, and this is true of all the 15 income tax brackets. Now, it is only when your increase of income penetrates the higher bracket does your tax increase. The percentage difference between the two rates, the two tax rates, and only on the amount that enters the higher tax bracket, which does not always happen, and seldom the entire amount. In most cases, the Reagan 3-year across the board 25% tax cut far exceeded the increased cost of your tax liability due to bracket creep. That is cheating Uncle Sam. Now, the Joint Committee stated it was unfair to taxpayers. That was used as a Trojan horse to lower taxes on the wealthy, who are not really harmed by inflation. They spend a smaller percentage of their income on consumer goods, rent, food, gas, and clothing, etc. And inflation increases the value of their stocks and real estate. Therefore, H.R. 4242, well, that's the tax cut that I was just showing you about in the 3-year, 25% across the board, made the tax code more unfair. The best or fairest way of handling bracket creep is the extension of the brackets. Reducing the tax rates is the worst way. The bottom bracket got no tax cut. The top tax bracket got the biggest tax cut, which does not experience bracket creep. No reason for that is after 70%, or the top bracket, there's no higher tax rates. So they can get an increase in income, they don't face higher taxation, because there's no higher taxes above them. Okay, the increase in the Social Security tax and the cap tied to the increase in the average wage index is not a valid reason for reducing one's income tax. The 22% built-in tax increase was overstated. I showed you that in that original graph that Reagan used as the basis for cutting your taxes was overstated. It was nowhere near 22%. All income rates reductions were excessive. The top four brackets got more than 25%, 3-year tax cut, and most of all, it cheated Uncle Sam. The deficit is the amount of money the federal government spent to make Americans safe, prosperous, and healthy that President Reagan and members of Congress who drafted, debated, and voted for this bill refused to pay for. They are crooks and liars. I'm going to go to this chart here. This chart shows the failure of Reaganomics. Cutting taxes to increase tax revenues. Okay, now the source of this data here is the Congressional Budget Office. Somehow this got out of order here, but I think I can figure it out. Or can I? Now we converted this over, I didn't check it out, but here, anyways, here's what I'm going to do. In 1981, they projected a deficit of 78.5. Well, that's pretty close. The actual deficit was 79 billion. Well, in 1982, remember, they're going to lower the deficit. They projected, these are projected estimates, 61.7. Remember, Reagan said next year, 1982, the deficit will go down. This is the projection. Well, it went up to 127.9. It didn't go down. Now, in 1983, projected budget deficit, 33.5 billion. Well, it went up to 207.8 billion, way off. Now, in 1984, excuse me, well, they projected a deficit of 9.5. That's way off. The deficit was 185.3 billion. Okay, 1985, in 4 years, they were supposed to balance the budget. Remember, Reagan said it would cancel in brief short years, cancel the deficit. Well, they projected less than a billion here, or that's 0.7 or 700 million. Well, the deficit was 222.2 billion. Now, in this 5-year period, the increase of the deficit was 638.3 billion more than projections. They were that much off. This is the total, the actual deficit. This is what they projected. You can see it's way off. Now, on this side here, we have interest on debt. What was projected here in this 5-year period from 81 to 85 was the cost of interest on debt here was supposed to be 333.9 billion for that 5-year period. Well, there was an increase here in the deficit, so the cost of interest went up. It was 484.1 billion. Now that's an increase of 150.2 billion over projections. The point I want to make here is what good did it do to cut welfare programs 20 billion a year when that was completely undone or offset by increases on the cost of interest on debt, 30 billion a year. So they went backwards, not forward. Failure of Reaganomics. Didn't reduce the deficit, it increased the cost of the interest. Okay, we're going to go down here. Can you move? Okay, well, that's good. As you know, Reagan was re-elected for a second term because he flattered voters and told them what they want to hear. He would resist tax increases. May 28, 1985, President Reagan went on national TV again to convince voters the nation would be better off by reducing the 14 marginal tax rates to 3, 15, 25, and 25 and 35. Now this is a still frame from that speech here. And this was a smokescreen to blind and pacify voters while Congress drafted a new big tax cuts on the wealthy. This became the Tax Reform Act of 1986. But like in 1981, it was not the tax cut that Reagan ballyhooed on national TV that gave the wealthy a bigger tax cut. Can we go up? Okay, I'm going to go. Okay. Gave the wealthy a bigger tax cut.